Hello everyone, Jace here. So Konami has announced a new box for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links for the Vrains World update. So they announced it kind of late, so I'm just gonna go unscripted, gonna go give my review of the cards in here. I already took a quick look at it, so I do have a small idea of what I'm gonna say. So first up, we'll go over the URs. Decode Talker. It's 2+ effect monsters, and if you don't know, to link summon a link 3, you need to use at least 3 monsters, or a link 2 and a regular and 1 monster. So this takes 2+ effect monsters, and it gains 500 attack for each monster it points to. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a card you control, you contribute a monster this card points to negate the activation. Notably, you cannot use the up arrow. The up arrow does not work, so you can't tribute the monster that it points to on your opponent's side of the field. That you only tribute your own monsters. So overall, Decode Talker's it's an okay beater. The targeting protection is like nice, but it's kind of a high drawback because you have to specifically have a monster in the zone your Decode Talker points to, and you need to be okay with tributing it. Next up is Salamander Great Heat Leo. It's a Fire Cybers that takes 2+ fire effect monsters. If it's link summoned, you can target 1 card in your opponent's spell and trap zone and shuffle it back into the deck. And then once per turn during your main phase, if this was link summoned using Salamander Great Heat Leo as material, you can target 1 face-up monster in the field and 1 monster in your graveyard. The attack of the first target becomes equal to the other targets until the end of this turn. So Heat Leo is like the main boss monster of Salamander Greats. But as like a generic, you're probably not going to make it, even though it is technically generic. But like, it's fine. 2300 attack is pretty good, especially since it has a debuff effect that works well with the Salamander Great Sanctuary field spell. And shuffling a spell card back into the deck is really nice. Link monsters are immune to cards like Canadia and Book of Moon, so being able to shuffle those back for free, like without getting disrupted, is really nice. Next up, Ningirisu as a UR. Ningirisu, the World Chalice Warrior. It's an Earth Warrior that takes 2+ link monsters. If this card is link summoned, you draw cards equal to the number of World Chalice monsters this card points to. You can only use this effect of Ningirisu, the World Chalice Warrior, once per turn. And then once per turn, you can send 1 card from each player's field to the graveyard. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 World Chalice monster from your hand. So Ningirisu is pretty good. It has to be in order to, the draw effect is nice, but it only works in World Chalice decks. The main thing is the second effect, where you can send a card from each player's field to the graveyard. That gets rid of a lot of like annoying boss monsters, like any untargetable boss monsters, like Saber Claw. Well, no, not the Lunalite, Saber Dancer. Yeah, that one. It might be fine as a one-off, but you have to make it using only link monsters, which is kind of restrictive. Next up is Apprentice Illusion Magician. This was already released in a selection box, so I don't really have much to say about it, except that like it's good Dark Magician support, and you've probably already seen it on ladder. Next up is Dogron, the Mad Flame Kaiju. So you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field in attack position by tributing 1 monster they control. And that's pretty much all I had to say. The other effects require Kaiju counters, which is the main gimmick of Kaijus, but like the best part about Kaijus isn't their like effects. It's just that they're just tributes. You tribute over your monster to get rid of any problem boss monsters. So like it's okay actually. Like Santa Claus and Volcanic Queen already exist as the 1 tribute version of this, and Lava Golem exists as a 2 tribute version of this. So like Dogron isn't actually that unique in what anymore. But like it's still pretty good, especially since unlike the other ones, if you have 2 Dogrons in hand, you can tribute your opponent's monster for a Dogron and then special summon another Dogron from the other Dogron from your hand, which is really cool. But yeah. Next up, Gizmek Okami, the Dreaded Deluge Dragon. You can pay 1,500 life points, destroy all monsters on the field that were special summoned from the extra deck. Also, you can only attack with one monster this turn. You can only use the following effects of Gizmek Okami once per turn. If 2 or more monsters were special summoned from the extra deck on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card in your possession is sent to a graveyard by an opponent's card, you can banish one monster from your opponent's graveyard, then gain life points equal to its attack. So that first effect can be insane, because like it can clear an opponent's entire field if they are running like a pendulum deck and then they also have an Xyz monster on the field or something. 2 or more monsters special summon the extra deck can be a little tricky, because not every deck ends on like a bunch of extra deck monsters. Usually it's only like 1 at most. But if we do run into like, if they make a deck that spams out a bunch of extra deck monsters, this is like the card to go second with. And the last effect is okay. It's just kind of a bonus tacked on. Next up, Signet Mining. Send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard, add 1 level 4 or lower Cypress type monster from your deck to your hand. So like this is an insane searcher for any Cypress deck. Just adding any level 4 or lower Cypress from the deck to the hand. We don't even have like Ash Blossom on like the TCG, so like this is never getting negated. So even though it's a -1, it's still pretty good. Next up, Pod of Duality. Excavate the top cards of your deck, add 1 of them to your hand. Also after that, shuffle the rest back into your deck. You can only activate 1 Pod of Duality per turn, and you cannot special summon during the turn you activate this card. I mean, this is one of the strongest pods, but not being able to special summon is a huge downside, so only a couple decks will be able to run this. There are like a couple decks in mind that I think are good that you can run this though. Like Dark Magician can definitely run this, because they usually special summon on the opponent's turn, so the drawback doesn't matter. Triamids could also probably run this, because they don't special summon really. It's usually, I think their only special summon is Sphinx, which doesn't matter. Gokis could maybe run this, like if you're running a trap heavy version, but like with the new support that's coming out with Link monsters, I don't think that kind of Goki will actually be viable anymore. Next up is Warning Point. When a monster is summoned this turn, that face-up monster cannot attack. Its effects are negated, also cannot be used as material for a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Linkmon summon. So, this is basically just kind of new trap hole. It's gonna be really good against Link monsters, especially like Link 1s or 2s, so they can't climb. If you use it on like a Link 1 or 2, they can't climb that higher into like a Link 3 or something, which is really insane. Negating the effects is also really nice. This is basically like a Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare, but like more generic. So yeah, I think this is probably good. Next up, Goki the Great Ogre. It takes 2+ Goki monsters, and all monsters on the field lose attack equal to their original defense. If this card would be destroyed by battle or a card effect, you can destroy one of your monsters this card points to instead. So like, 2600 is really pretty high, and being able to debuff your opponent's entire field if they don't have any Link monsters is also really strong. So like, this could help Gokis potentially get an OTK. Along with another card that I will be going over, because they did leak the drop rewards for the Legendary Duelist, so I'll be going over those after the box. Next up, Brute Enforcer. It takes 2 effect monsters. You can discard 1 card and target 1 face-up card your opponent controls. Your opponent can discard 1 card with the same original type, monster, spell, or trap, as that face-up card to negate this effect, otherwise destroy that face-up card. And you can only use it once per turn. So, this is probably the best generic Link we're going to be getting for this new box, because it only takes 2 effect monsters, which is really easy to make, and it can destroy any face-up card. If you're destroying monsters, that might be a little bit of a problem though, because their opponent can probably has a monster in hand to discard to negate the effect. But like, if you can need to destroy like a spell or trap, this card is really strong for that. And like, just being generic, like an easy discard to destroy, this will definitely see play. It might not always be summoned, but it'll definitely see play in extra decks just as like an good option. Next up is Flame Administrator. This takes 2 Cybers monsters, and all Link monsters you control gain 800 attack, and you can only control 1 Flame Administrator. So this is specifically for Cybers, but it's also Fire type, which works well with Salamangreats, so that's pretty nice. It's basically just a 2k beater though. So yeah, overall it's like okay as a Salamangreat option and as a Cybers option, but it's whatever. Not the greatest Link monster. Coach King Giant Trainer is also coming out. This was also in the selection box, I'm pretty sure. So we already know how good it is. It sees play in like DDDs and other rank 8 decks, I think. Next up is Coach Captain Bearman. You can normal summon this card without tributing, but its original attack becomes 1300. Once returned, you can make all level 4 Beast Warrior type monsters you control become level 8 until the end of his turn. This card cannot be used as Xyz material for an Xyz summon, except for the Xyz summon of a Fire Warrior type monster. And that's pretty much only Giant Trainer. This card is not great. Even though you can normal summon without tributing, it still takes up your normal summons, so you have to get other level 4 beasts on the field without somehow using your normal summon. Like, if there's a deck that can make this, they can turbo into Giant Trainer, but like, I don't know if that by itself is really that good. Next up is Draco Net. This is a Cybers. When this card is normal summoned, you can special summon 1 level 2 or lower normal monster from your hand or deck in defense position. So like, this is pretty good. Summoning any level 2 or lower normal monster from your deck can be insane. There are a couple of good targets for this, like do we have Galaxy Serpent? I don't know if we have Galaxy Serpent, but we at least have a Guardragon Justice CL, which is level 2 tuner, which is pretty nice. You can also grab a level 1 tuner with like Flame Guard. That one like water monster I think is in all the 5D starter decks. So this can make 5s and 4s synchros, which is nice. Or you can just use it for a Link 2, which is probably what you should be doing. It's a good card. I'm not sure we'll see play just because our Link options aren't very great, and the level 5 and level 4 pool for synchros is also not super great. Next up is Rescue Ferret. You can shuffle this card you control into the deck, special summon monsters from your deck, except Rescue Ferret, whose total levels equal 6 to your zones a Link monster points to, but those summoned monsters have their effects negated, also destroy them during the end phase. So Rescue Ferret really suffers from how the Duel Links field is. So at most, if the Link monster has a downward pointing and a downward diagonal Link arrow, you can summon 2 level 3s maybe, or a level 2 and a level 4. But like overall, there's not many options this enables, and you have to get it onto the field somehow with a Link monster. So unlike the TCG where it's way easier to use this is not super great here. Next up is Lady Debug. It's a Cybers, and when this card is normal summoned or special summoned, you can add 1 level 3 or lower Cybers type monster from your deck to your hand, and you can only use it once per turn. So like Lady Debug is amazing. First off, it's searchable after sign and binding, and then level 3 or lower Cybers type monsters are usually pretty good. This is especially good in like Salamangreat, because we are getting like 1 copy of Gazelle, I think, from level ups. So this is another way to search that, which is really strong. And this just gets better with the more Cybers type monsters we get. So like, this is definitely something you want to pick up if you want to build a Cybers deck in the future, or even right now. Next up is Synat Crosswipe. Tribute 1 Cybers type monster, then target 1 card in the field, destroy it. I mean, this is basically Ballista Squad, but only for Cybers. And like, Ballista Squad does see some play, so I'm not going to completely discount this, but like, it being a spell does make it a little bit better than Ballista Squad. But I don't know if Cybers decks will really like want to run this. I don't think the 2 Cybers decks we're getting on launch, Salamangreat and Kotalkers, don't really like tributing their monsters like on the field for effects, and they usually don't like end on anything small on a field that likes to be tributed. So this is questionable. Might still see play though, because it's like a decent card. Next up is Salamander Great Circle. Activate one of these effects. Add one Salamander Great monster from your deck to your hand, or target one Salamander Great Link monster you control that was link summoned using a monster with its same name as material. That link monster is unaffected by monster effects, except its own this turn. So, the first effect is just amazing. It's just a Rhoda for any single Salamander Great. And since I'm pretty sure we're getting Gazelle, like I've already said, there are now, like, with Sign Up Mining, Salamander Great Circle, and Lady U-Bug, there are 9 ways to get to Gazelle, not including just hard drawing it. So, like, that is pretty insane for consistency. And, like, since it's, I'm pretty sure, I don't think they, like, limit box cards, so this is coming unlimited, too. So, you won't be able to run 3 of this. And this is definitely a huge pickup for any Salamander Great enthusiasts out there. Next up is Internal Cell. Every Dark Magician in your monster zone is unaffected by opponent's card effects. If this face-up card leaves the field, destroy all monsters you control. You can only use the following effects of Eternal Soul once per turn. Special summon one Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard, or add one Dark Magic attack or 1,000 knives from your deck to your hand. So Eternal Soul is really strong for Dark Magicians. It's basically like better Dark Magician's Navigation. Like, even though Magician's Navigation special summons one from deck 2, this one can special summon from graveyard, which is really helpful for recovery, and it makes them unaffected by card effects, which makes the Dark Magicians hard to get rid of except by battle. Also being able to search Dark Magic Attack or 1,000 Knives on demand is really nice. I wouldn't be surprised if Dark Magician sees a lot more play because of this. Next up is Imduct the World Chalice Dragon. It requires a normal monster except a token, and during your main phase you can normal summon one World Chalice monster in addition to your normal summon / set, and you can only gain this effect once per turn. At the end of the damage step is his battles an opponent's monster discard points to, and destroy that opponent's monster. If this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon one World Chalice from your hand. Imduct is like really important for World Chalice decks because you usually like normal summon one of your normal monster World Chalices, special summon this, and then tribute over it for World Legacy World Chalice, which gets all your combos going. I'm not exactly sure how good World Chalice that would be, because like the biggest thing in that deck is like it's a huge combo deck, and it like needs every single card in its hand to like do any combos. And with only 4 starting cards in your starting hand, it's pretty hard to do any actual like strong combos with this archetype. Next up is Id the World Chalice Priestess. It's a Link 2 that requires 2 monsters with different types and attributes. This Link card cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect. Your opponent cannot target this Link card with card effects. If a monster this card points to would be destroyed by a card effect, you can send this card to the graveyard instead. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, special summon one World Chalice monster from your hand. So the protection effect is pretty nice, even though it's on a small body. Not being able to be destroyed by battle or card effects, or be targeted is really hard to deal with. You can just destroy the monster this card is linking to, so it's usually not a huge deal, but it's still really strong. And like, it's pretty much a staple in World Chalice decks just because of the last effect, just like in deck. I'm pretty sure all the World Chalice Link monsters have that effect. Like, that last effect is really what lets the World Chalice deck go into like a huge combos. Next up is Aurum the World Chalice Blade Master. It requires 2 World Chalice monsters and gains 300 attack for each World Legacy monster in your graveyard with a different name. You contribute 1 World Chalice monster this card points to, then target 1 other monster in your graveyard, special summon it to your zone this card points to. And you can only use that effect once per turn, and if it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 World Chalice monster from your hand. So Blade Master is probably the best Link 2 in the World Chalice deck. It is important, but like Blade Master is the Link 2 usually go into first, just because it has downward pointing arrows. And its effect is pretty good, gaining 300 attack. Like that usually bumps it up to 2300 because I don't think you run too many other World Legacy monsters. World Chalice decks, besides like World Legacy World Chalice. But yeah, this is a decent card for a World Chalice deck. Overall, I'm not sure how good World Chalice will be though, just because there's not really a huge payoff for linking a bunch of monsters into link monsters. Next up is Mrs. Radiant. It just requires 2 Earth monsters, and all Earth monsters on the field gain 500 attack and defense. Also, all Wind monsters on the field gain 400 attack and defense. And this card destroy that battle or card effect you can target 1 Earth monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only use this effect of Mrs. Radiant once per turn. So like Mrs. Radiant is definitely strong for any Earth deck. It just has generic materials, 1900 beater, giving your entire field like 500 more attack is really strong, and it has a good recovery for if it gets destroyed, which is nice. This is definitely going to be like a staple in any Earth deck, just like as a one-off usually, but like if you need to go into it, it'll just be there in your extra deck. Next up is Link Disciple. This requires any level 4 or lower or Cyberse type monster. You contribute 1 monster this card points to, draw 1 card, and place 1 card from your hand to the bottom of the deck. You can only use the effect of Link Disciple once per turn. So Link Disciple, unless we get Link Devotee, Link Disciple isn't that great, just because it's like a straight -1 to do its effect, and even though you cycle a card, you have to put something back, so it's like not great. Like you can't really top deck anything, unless you already have other cards in your hand too. But this is still important because it's like a generic Link 1 for any Cyberse deck. So like, Kotarkers will definitely use this as like a Link climbing tool. Next up is Vector Scare Archfiend. This requires 2+ Cyberse type monsters, and when this card destroys an opponent's monster out of battle and sends it to the graveyard, you contribute 1 monster this card points to, and special summon that destroyed monster to any zone this card points to. If you special summon to your opponent's field by this effect, this card can make a second attack during your battle phase. So, Vector Scare Archfiend might be okay. It has like 2400 attack, which is a decent amount. Like the first effect you'll be using with it, you'll probably like try to OTK with it if you're giving your opponent a monster. But otherwise, like, it doesn't really make sense to tribute a monster this card points to. I mean, actually, no, wait, this is actually much more better than I thought. Because I just realized you can like attack with the monster this card points to first, and then use Vector Scare Archfiend to destroy a different monster, and then get another attack out of this. So this might be okay. Like it's a decent enough payoff for Cyberse decks. But like overall the Cyberse deck doesn't seem super great just over these cards. Next up is Doolo Chimera. It's a Fire Link 2. It requires 2 fire monsters, and its effect is basically the same as Mrs. Radiant, but for fire monsters for the attacking and water monsters for the attack lowering. So yeah, this is fine in any fire deck. Just a generic Link 2 that has 1900 attack and can buff your entire field is okay. So yeah, not really much to say about it. Same thing I said for Mrs. Radiant, but just for fire decks. Next up is Defender of the Labyrinth. This requires 2 normal monsters, and all non-effect monsters you control gain 500 attack. Also, all effect monsters your opponent control lose 500 attack. And if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by your opponent's card, you can target 1 non-effect monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So basically this is like a Mrs. Radiant for non-effect monsters, even though it itself isn't a non-effect monster. But like a deck using a bunch of normal monsters will probably play this, just because gaining 500 attack for all of them is pretty nice. And non-effect monster does refer to like extra deck non-effect monsters, like fusions that don't have effects, or like synchros that don't have effects, or even Xyz that don't have effects. I don't know if we'll get any Link monsters that don't have effects. They might give us like Land Frinkus for free, but I'm not sure. But yeah, this is like okay for like normal monster decks, but like those aren't really that strong anyway. Next up is Salamangreat Mirror. It's a Cyberse level 2 fire effect monster, and if it's added to your hand except by drawing it for your normal draw, you can reveal it and special summon it from your hand. And if it's in your hand, you can discard one other Salamangreat card and special summon it from your hand. So like Mirror isn't usually played in like TCG builds of Salamangreat, but like it's not too bad. Like you can search, if you already have like Gazelle in hand, you can like search it with Circle to special summon it, and then link it off for Bale Links and then summon a Gazelle in your hand. So it's not like the worst card for Salamangreats. And the second effect is also okay. Discard, like there are Salamangreat cards with graveyard effects, so it's not always a minus to discard a Salamangreat. So this might see some play in Salamangreats. Next up is Falco. Salamangreat Falco. If this is sent to a graveyard, you can target one Salamangreat spell trap in your graveyard, set that target to your field. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target one Salamangreat monster you control. Return that monster to your hand, and if you do, special summon this card. You can only use one Salamangreat Falco effect per turn, and only once that turn. So like Falco is pretty strong for like grabbing spell traps. I think the only one we'll actually be getting though is Gazelle. I mean not Gazelle, Circle. But like still, being able to recycle Circle off and linking this off is pretty strong. And since it's searchable, you probably only run like one of it. Next up, Salamangreat Foul. If a Salamangreat monster except Foul is normal or special summon to your field, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand, and you can only use this effect of Salamangreat Foul once per turn. You can send one Salamangreat card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard, and target one set spell or trap your opponent controls. That set card cannot be activated this turn. So Foul is pretty good in Salamangreats for enabling rank 4 plays, because it's just a free level 4 special summon, but it's also like pretty good like as a link climbing tool, just like as an extender. So if you have it in hand, it could potentially help you get into Heat Leo. So you'll probably run this. So over like these Salamangreat cards are like the card quality is usually higher than normal. Next one is Beat Bison. If you have 3 or more Salamangreat monsters in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. You can target fire link monsters in your graveyard up to a number of face-up cards your opponent controls. Return them to the extra deck, then you can negate the effects of face-up cards your opponent controls until the end of this turn up to a number of cards you returned. So Beat Bison is honestly not great. Requiring 3 or more Salamangreat monsters in the graveyard, like that isn't super hard, but it's like not something like it requires setup still, so it's not like the best like turn 1 play, because its effect is only really good going second, and it only negates the cards, and it special summons the defense, so you can't really make use of that high attack point value. So this card is just like whatever. Next up, World Chalice Guard Dragon. When a card or effect is activated that targets your linked monster, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard. Negate the activation if you do destroy that card. You can banish this card from your graveyard and target one normal monster in your graveyard, special summon and defense to your zone a link monster points to. So Guard Dragon is pretty important for World Chalice combos, just because it's an extender for by targeting a normal monster in the grave, which is usually one of the World Chalice normal monsters. But like, World Chalice itself doesn't seem super strong of these cards I'm reading, because there's not really a payoff to all this link summoning. Its in-hand effect though is actually might be generically good, just because it's a hand trap that can potentially protect your link monsters or linked monsters. And if you don't know, being linked means a link arrow is pointing at a monster, or as a link monster, the link monster is pointing at a monster. So the monster that is being pointed at and the monster that is pointing are both considered linked, if you don't know what that means. Next up is a backlinker. If your opponent controls a monster in the extra monster zone, you can special summon this card from your hand, and you contribute this card, shuffle all monsters from the extra monster zone into a deck. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. So that second effect is actually kind of interesting, because like if there are monsters, like decks might abstain from summoning into the extra deck if this card sees play. Like, just because it's a free bounce back. And for certain decks, like maybe like Trimid, I guess, like cards that don't really summon from the extra deck, this might be okay as a going second tool. Next up is Ram Claudia. When this is a normal summon, you can target one Cyber's type monster in your graveyard except Ram Claudia, add it to your hand, and if this card is destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can special summon one level 4 or lower Cyber's type monster from your deck. So that first effect is nice, like it's good recovery, and the second effect is pretty strong, being just like a good generic floating effect. So overall, Ram Claudia is pretty strong for any like Cyber's deck, because like from what I've seen so far, Cyber's isn't going to be that much stronger, isn't getting any like insane cards that they would have in TCG like the microcoder. So like Ram Claudia is like good support for that deck for now. Next up is Boot Staggered. When a Cyber's type monster is normal summoned to your field, you can special summon this card from your hand. And you can only use this effect of Boot Staggered once per turn. And when it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon one Stag token. So, like, this is a pretty good generic Cyber's, just because it can special summon itself really easily. Like, as long as you have any other level 4 or lower Cyber's type monster, this just comes out for free. Being 2300 is pretty, like, big. And just in general, like, it's a pretty good extender. So for like these early Cyber's builds, I'm guessing this will probably see play. Next up is World Legacy Heart. Target 2 World Chalice monsters in your graveyard with different names, add them to your hand. If your linked Link monster will be destroyed by battle, you can banish this card from the graveyard instead. Like, this is a really strong card. Just because recovering 2 cards is basically like a salvage just for World Chalice. And because of the Link Monster's second effect, you can usually special summon those cards. But like I've been saying, I don't know what the payoff for all this Link summoning for Legacy World Chalice really is. Next up is Link Bumper. Requires 2 Cyber type monsters, and once per turn at the end of the damage step of this monster, if your monster this card points to attacked an opponent's Link monster, you can activate this effect. The monster that attack gains 1 additional attack on an opponent's Link monster during this battle phase for each Link monster you can currently control except this card. It's kind of meh. Like, if you can somehow set it up, you could get 2 attacks out of this, but like, I'm not sure what decks are going to be running a bunch of Link monsters and just ending on a bunch of Link monsters for you really to take advantage of this effect. Next up is Recovery Sorcerer. It's a Link 2. Oh no, I didn't see the left arrow. But yeah, it's Link 2, requires 2 Cyber type monsters, and as a quick effect, you can target 1 Cyber type Link monster in your graveyard that was destroyed this turn, special summon it. But it has its effect negated, also destroyed during the end phase. Yeah, no, this is really not great. Like, as a quick effect, it can use on your opponent's turn, obviously, but like, if it gets destroyed at the end phase, recovering a Link monster doesn't really matter, and your Link monsters aren't usually being destroyed during your own turn for you really to take advantage of this effect. So this card is basically just pack filler, but like, it's a generic Link monster, so it might still see play. Well, not generic, but it's a generic for Cyber's decks. So it might just be like a one-off, just as something a Link climb through. Next up is Linker Bell. It's generic with only 2 monsters, but you cannot Link summon this monster unless you have at least 3 more cards in your extra deck than your opponent. So like, you can basically only use this card going second, because requiring 3 or more cards in your extra deck just over your opponent just to summon this is really hard to achieve. But there are some decks that just don't really extra deck, which you might be able to like cheese this out with. Like, being a generic Link 2 means it might see play, but like, that requirement is really hard to use, play around. Next up is Space Insulator. It requires 2 monsters, generic, so it's really generic. And monsters the card points to lose 800 attack and defense. When a Cyber Type Link monster is Link summoned to your field, all these cards in your graveyard, except the turn this year sent to a graveyard, you can Link summon this card to your zone that monster points to. But cannot be used as Link material, also banish it when it leaves the field. So Space Insulator is like okay extension. Like it's a decent enough Link 2 to go into as generically, because like you can debuff an opponent's monster by 800 if you position the Link arrows correctly. But otherwise it's not super great. I don't know, it's being generic Link monster, Link 2 though, it'll probably just still see play. Next up is Penta Stag. This requires 2 effect monsters and your linked monster, if your linked monster attacks a defensive monster, inflict piercing battle damage. So yeah, I mean, just having the option is nice, just because it's a generic monster. You can potentially get an OTK with it if you point it to the correct monster with it. And since it's generic, it'll probably just see play in a couple extra decks, just in case. Next up is Traffic Ghost. It requires three monsters and just doesn't have an effect. So requiring 3 monsters is really harsh, especially since unlike in like the TCG and OCG, one of those Link arrows is not going to be useful at all. So this card is just kind of like pack filler. Because if it was like 2+ monsters, it might be okay, but requiring you to go -2 for this is pretty bad. Next up is Land Ferinkus. It just requires 2 monsters and has 1200 attack. So just being a generic Link 2, requiring 2 monsters, this will probably see play. Space Insulator is usually better in most cases, but like this is still fine, especially since it doesn't have an upward pointing arrow, which might like hurt you against certain pen decks. But like yeah, this is just generic Link 2, so it's okay. Next up is Salamangreat Fennec. If a Cyberse type monster you control that was special summon from the extra deck is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can special summon this card from your graveyard or hand, but banish it when it leaves the field. If this card is sent to a graveyard as material for a Link summon a Link 2 or higher Cyberse type Link monster, you can add 1 Salamangreat normal spell from your deck to your hand. I'm not. Are we getting any Salamangreat normal spells? That's probably in the N rarity category. You're probably gonna show off a Salamangreat normal spell, but like that first effect is fine. Like it's a little bit of recovery if one of your Cyberstone monsters gets destroyed, but it's kind of whatever. It is searchable, so like you might be able to play this as a one-off on the Salamangreat deck. Next up is Salamangreat Coyote. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent as linked material this turn, you can activate one of the following effects. Target 1 Salamangreat monster in your graveyard except Salamangreat Coyote, special summon in defense position. Target 1 Salamangreat card in your graveyard except Salamangreat Coyote, add it to your hand. I mean, like it's okay. Just recovery if you use it as linked material is fine. And like since it's searchable with Circle and like Cyanide Mining, you might be just okay with having it as a one-off. Next up is Super Anti-Kaiju War Machine Mechadogron, and cannot be normal summoned or set, must first be special summoned from your hand while your opponent controls a Kaiju monster. You can only control 1 Kaiju monster. Once per turn, you can remove 2 Kaiju counters from anywhere on the field, equip 1 Kaiju monster from your hand or graveyard to this card, and this card gains attack equal to the combined original attack of all Kaiju monsters equipped to it by this effect. So yeah, Mechadogron's awful. Do not play this. It requires Kaiju counters, which I haven't mentioned yet, but like Kaiju counters are not super hard to build up. It's just that they require a field spell basically, and like this effect is not great because it equips from your graveyard or your hand, and like usually your Kaiju is probably gonna be on your opponent's side of the field. If it like stole the Kaiju, it would have been better, but like overall, this card is just not great. Next up is Ram Clouder. You contribute 1 monster and target 1 Cyber type monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So like, this card is okay. It's much better in cross duels, I've gotta say. But contributing a monster just to special summon a monster from graveyard isn't super like impactful, especially with the types of Cybers type monsters that are out there so far. This card is just not great. Next up is Stack Reviver. If this card is used as a material for a link summon, you can target one level 4 or lower, one other level 4 or lower Cybers type monster in your graveyard that was used as material for that link summon, special summon in defense. So like this is an okay extension if you can get it on the field with another link monster, like level 4 lower link monster. But like it's kind of hard to use overall, just because you need to be making like a link 2 or higher with another level 4 or lower Cybers type monster. Next up is Salvagent Driver. It's a Cybers type. If a Cybers type link monster you control is destroyed by an opponent's card effect while this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can special summon this card, and you can just discard one spell and target one Cybers type monster in your graveyard, special summon it. But it cannot attack directly this turn. Like, this card is okay recovery, I guess. If you can somehow dump it without keeping it in your hand, it's okay. But like, it's end rarity for a reason. This is just kind of pack filler. Link Infraflyer is a level 2, and you can just special summon this card from your hand to a link monster, to a zone the link monster points to. It's a pretty simple effect. It's pretty nice in link decks as an extender. But yeah, it's a pretty simple effect. Being end rarity is nice. That just means any deck can make it. Grab it. Like, it's pretty easy to get for any free-to-play players. But yeah, just, I guess, keep an eye on it, because like it's always like good extension. And if a link deck actually becomes better, this is definitely gonna be like a staple there. Next up, Lockout Gardener. When an opponent's monster declares a direct attack, you can special summon this card from your hand in attack position, and if you do, it cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. When an effect of a monster your opponent controls is activated, that targets one Cybers type monster you control. No other cards with affecting it. Negate the effects of both that Cybers type monster you control and the opponent's monster until the end phase. So this is just kind of awful. You have to keep it, like, you can special summon it like when your opponent declares a direct attack, which might be okay. Actually, no, wait. Can't be destroyed by battle this turn. Actually, this is really nice for certain decks. It's basically like if battling Boxer Veil, and since the end rarity it throws a good grab. Like any deck that can use like hand traps like Veil or Sphere Creeper or something would probably use this. But the second effect is just not great. Next up is Strike Big Partner. I'm gonna be honest, all these pack filler cards are just not, I've never seen them before, ever played. So this cannot be normal summon or set. It must be special summon by the following effect. When the effect activation of a monster you control is negated, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summon, you can target one level 4 lower Cybers type monster in your graveyard special summon it. Yeah, no, this is awful. That summoning condition is pretty hard to pull off. If you can normal summon this might have been fine, but like since you can only special summon this is pretty bad. Next up is Bit Trooper. You can summon one level 2 or lower monster from your hand to the graveyard, special summon this card from your hand. It's a pretty simple effect. If you can find like a level 2 that's okay with being in the graveyard, this is okay extension. But yeah, overall it's whatever. Next up is Storm Cipher. Cannot attack directly or attack monsters in the extra monster zone. Unaffected by monster effects activating an extra monster. Cannot be destroyed or battled with monsters in the extra monster zone. So this is just pretty bad. They're not giving a skill drain ever, so you can basically just never attack with this. Like 2400 is a lot. So it beats over most normal summon monsters, but like usually your opponent has more attack than this. And like if they just don't special summon something in the extra monster zone, they can just easily deal with this. Next up is Cyrus White Hat. When you control 2 or more monsters with the same type, you can special summon this card from your hand. And you can only summon Cyrus White Hat this turn, once per turn. If this card is sent to a graveyard as link material, you can make all monsters your opponent controls lose 100 attack until the end of this turn. so like this is just like good generic extension for decks that use only one type really. And the attack loss is fine, but like otherwise just like a one-off maybe. Sin Tabler. You can reveal this card in your hand and target one level 4 or lower. No, wait, exactly level 4. Okay. Cyber type monster in the graveyard. Special summon this card to your hand to your zone a linked link monster you control points to. And if you do, return the targeted monster to your hand. So I mean, if you can pull it off, this is a +1. But like your link monster has to be linked. And from all the arrows I've seen on the link monsters, that's pretty hard to do. Like just do it with your own field. You basically have to use like an upward pointing arrow link monster to trigger this effect. But I mean, it's okay. If you can somehow trigger it, it's really good. Cluster Congester. If this card is normal summon or special summon, you control no link monsters, you can special summon one Congester token. You can only use that effect once per turn or once per battle step. If a link monster you control is attacked, you can banish the card from your graveyard, and that link monster special summon Congester token is up to the number of link monsters your opponent controls. No, this is just garbage. I don't even see the use case for this. Like, once you get starting to get the end of these are not great. Signet Backdoor. Target one Cyber type monster you control, banish it, and if you do, add one Cyber type monster from your deck to your hand whose attack is lower than that monster's original attack. During your next standby phase, return that monster banished by this effect to the field, and you can attack directly that turn. So this is pretty reminiscent of like World Legacy Clash, actually. Like you can use this in like some Cyber stacks, and like just save a Cyrus monster with it, like World Legacy Clash. So it might see play just because of it. And the adding effect is nice. You're probably gonna have to, like, you're gonna have to find something high attack enough that you'll be able to search though. Next up, Salamander Great Claw. It's an equipped spell card, and equip only to a Salamander Great monster. The equipped monster cannot be chosen about or card effects, and if it attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing to your opponent. If the equipped monster is a Salamander link monster you control that is link summoned using a monster with the same name, during each battle phase, it can make attacks on monsters up to its link rating. So this is like fine as a one-off just because it's searchable with Circle. But like, this is, I think this might be actually be the win con of Salmon Greats as is in Duel Links, just because you can equip it to Helio and get 3 attacks on monsters, which can potentially OTK. Next up is Salmon Great Burning Shell. Special summon one Salamander Great monster from your hand but negate its effects, then immediately after its effect resolves, link summon one Salamander Great link monster using materials of control, including the summon monsters. This turn, that link summon monster can't attack or activate its effects. During your main phase, you can banish the card from your graveyard and target one Salamander Great and link monster in your graveyard. Return it to your extra deck. Yeah, no, this is pretty bad. Like, it's just a straight -1 for no reason, because you can't even use the link monster's, like, effect. I guess the graveyard effect is okay to recover Salamander Great link monsters, because you do, like, burn through those pretty quickly with the field spell. And since you could, like, send this off with Gazelle, it might be okay as a one-off. Next up is Kyoto Waterfront. It's a field spell, and each time a card is sent from the field to the graveyard, place one Kaiju counter on this card. Once per turn, while 3 or more Kaiju counters on this card, you can add one Kaiju monster from your deck to your hand. And if this would be destroyed, you can remove one Kaiju counter from this card instead. Like, Kyoto Waterfront is really amazing for Kaiju, like pure Kaiju decks, but those don't really exist. Like, searching any Kaiju with 3 or more counters is really good, especially since it doesn't even remove the counters, which is kind of silly. And it has a self-protection effect, which is also really silly. But like, your base, like this is not super great for outside of like silly Kaiju decks, which probably won't exist because I've only seen one Kaiju deck released so far. So unless they release more, this is pretty useless. Next up is Sign Out Refresh. When opponent's link type Cyber's type Monster declared to attack, destroy all monsters in the main monster zone. During the end phase of this turn, special summon the graveyard as many cyber-type link monsters as possible to their owner's field that were destroyed by this effect. And when an opponent's monster activates the effect, you can banish this card from the graveyard. Cyber-type link monsters you control are unaffected by card effects except their own. So this is just really bad, just because it only works against like an opponent that's also playing Cyber Stack. So yeah, not really much to say there. Next up is 3 Strike Barrier. Your opponent controls exactly 3 cards activate one of these effects. This turn your monsters cannot be destroyed in battle. This turn you take no battle damage. This turn each time your monster inflicts battle damage to your opponent gains the same amount of life points. So yeah, that activation condition is kind of hard to deal with. Because it's like, this is basically a dead draw any turn past turn 1. Because like turn 1, you can still activate it pretty easily, because like your opponent's probably going to suck down 3 of the cards. But like past that, if they have anything more than 3 cards, you're just kind of screwed out of activating this. Next up is the Recoded Alive. Target 1 Link 3 Cyber-type Link monster you control or in your graveyard, banish it, and if you do, special summon 1 Code Talker monster from your extra deck. Oh, it's not Link 3 low, it's just Link 3. But yeah, if you control no monsters than the extra monsters, then you can banish those cards from your graveyard, then target 1 of your banished Code Talker monsters, special summon it. So like, this is pretty, really good recovery actually for Cyber Stacks. Because for the swapping effect is okay. I think we're only getting Decode Talker and Encode Talker at first on launch though, so it's not great for now. But like, I think the Storm Axis skill also gives you Link monsters, so I'll be going over that later. But yeah, the main part of this card is the Graveyard effect, where you can just recover and banish the Code Talker. Like, that plays around Karma Count, which is nice. Next up is Link Restart. When a spell or trap effect card or monster effect is activated that will inflict damage to you, negate the activation. If you do, snap summon Link monster from your graveyard. So burn damage I don't think is very common, so like, this is really situational. Not really much to say there. And that's it. Because the rest are reprints, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the rest are reprints. Okay, so that's it for the box. So overall, this box is meh. Like, there are a couple of like good cards, but like for the first Link monster box, the Link monsters in this box aren't super great. Decode Talker and like the Brute Enforcer are probably the best ones. So like, those are kind of the chase cards, but this box does have a couple of good generic cards like Pod Duality, and a couple good archetype cards like Eternal Soul. So maybe it might make certain decks like more playable. But overall, it's just okay. And next up, sorry. Next up is I'll just be going over some of the some of my speculation on certain cards that are confirmed, like outright. So as you can see, Gazelle is in this deck. This is the Tokyo Game Show sample decks that they let people playtest, and since Gazelle is in here, and it isn't in any other like drops or anything, that this probably means that Gazelle is going to be like a level up. Also, there are 2 Sunlight Wolves, and Sunlight Wolf is really good. So yeah, there's Sunlight Wolf will also probably be a level up, and Sunlight Wolf is one of the best Link monsters for Soundman Great to sit on. So yeah, overall, but from what I've seen though, Soundman Great isn't super strong, just because there's no real payoff to them, besides maybe like a Heat Leo with the equipped card. But yeah, even though like they're giving us the strong Soundman Great cards, they're not really giving us any payoff for them, which is a problem. So I don't think Soundman Greats will actually be very good for now. Unless they give us like Roar later, it's not going to be super great right now. Next up, let's go for drop rewards, actually, because I should have gone over this first. So here are the leaked drop rewards. So Proxy Dragon, it's a generic Link 2, and if a card you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can destroy one monster the card points to instead. Like, it's okay, just because it's a generic Link 2 though, it'll probably see play. Just to get like open up fields, but like its arrows aren't as good as Lamphrinkus. Next up is Balancer Lord, and once per turn you can pay 1000 life points, and then you can get another normal summon as Cyber type monster. And if it's banished, you can special summon a level 4 lower monster from your hand, which is just generic, any level 4 lower. So that first effect makes this card very important for Cyber decks, and that second effect can be like triggered with Sign-Up Backdoor, which has lots of synergy there. So yeah, Balancer Lore is definitely a staple, especially if you can get like a ladybug or something from it. Next up is Backup Operator, and it's a level 3 Cyberse, and you can target one face-up monster that a link monster you control points to, special summon this card from your hand, and you do return that monster to hand. And special summon this way, banish it when it leaves the field. So this one isn't as great, just because it, like, you're basically just cycling one card from your, like, actually that might be okay, but actually no, there's not really any Cyberse cards that can take advantage of this really. Actually, wait, it just phases a monster. I can't really see any loops this can cause though, because like I know you can potentially like loop in a non-once per turn effect with this, but like I don't see anything you can really use this with. Next up are Soul Burner's drop wards. So the three most important ones are Bale Links, Foxy, and Sanctuary. So Bale Links is the generic Link 1 that just requires any level 4 lower Cyberse to monster. And if it's Link Summon, you can add one Salamangreat Sanctuary from your deck to your hand. And if a Salamangreat card you would control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So both effects are pretty important. Like Sanctuary is the field spell that the deck revolves around. So being able to just search on an extra deck monster is really insane. And the second effect is nice protection, just for your Salamangreats. Next up is Foxy, and when it's normal summoned, you can activate the top 5 cards to your deck, no, top 3 cards, sorry, of your deck, and add one activated Salamangreat card to your hand, also shuffle the rest into the deck. And if this is in a graveyard and the face-up spell or trap is on the field, you can discard a Salamangreat card and special summon this card. Then you can destroy one face-up spell or trap on the field. You can only use one effect per turn, only once that turn though. So you can't like normal summon Foxy and use the second effect while it's in the graveyard. But if you normal summon it, don't use the effect, and then go into Bale Links, grab Sanctuary, then you can discard a card and then bring Foxy back for a free Link 2. Because it's only when a face-up spell trap card is on the field, which includes your own cards, which includes Sanctuary. And then Sanctuary lets you link summon a Salamangreat Link monster using one Salamangreat Link monster you control with the same name as the entire material. And then during damage calculation, you can pay 100 life points and target a Link monster you control, make its attack 0, and if you do, gain attack equal to its original attack. So the most important effect is the first effect, because like Salamangreats revolve all around, the Link monsters revolve all around being used as Link material for itself, so to trigger like bonus effects. So this is really this is basically a main where you're doing this. The second effect is okay in like niche scenarios, but like you're never really using it, because you have to pay more life points than you're usually gaining from it. Because it doesn't negate the attack or anything, so you'll still take damage from the attack anyway. And lastly is Go Onizuka's drop rewards. First up is Goki the Thunder Ogre, and it requires 2+ Goki monsters. And if a monster this card points to is destroyed with power, card effect you can make this card gain 400 attack. The turn player applied the following effect while his monster is on the field. During their main phase, they can normal summon one monster from their hand to the zone, discard points to in addition to the normal summoner set. So this is really important for like Gokis, because it's like extension. And like it's okay, it's an okay Link 3 in general, just because it's 2200, like gains 400, so it's fine. But you'll mostly be using this as an extension for like Link climbing Gokis. We don't have any Link 4s for now, but like once we get those, this will be very important for making those Link 4 Gokis, Link monsters. Next up is Dino Wrestler King T Rexel, and it requires 2+ Dino Wrestler monsters. And if this is battles, your opponent cannot activate spellcraft cards until you end the damage step, so basically inching your golem. Your opponent's monsters cannot target monsters for attacks except this one, so it like redirects attacks. And on 3k that is pretty notable. And at the start of your opponent's battle phase, you can target one attack position monster your opponent controls. This battle phase, your opponent cannot attack with other monsters until that one has, and if it does not, declare an attack destroy at the end of the battle phase. So like, overall, it has good attack, I guess. Like, Dino Wrestlers themselves just revolve around some dumb like battle gimmick that isn't very good. So this is probably won't see play at all. But it is the boss monster for a Dino Wrestler, so you'll kind of have to run in like a Dino Wrestler deck. And lastly, a Goki finishing move. Target one Goki Link monster you control, it gains attack equal to its Link rating times 1000 until the end of its turn. Also, if it attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. For the rest of this turn after this card resolved, you cannot declare attacks except with Goki monsters. You can only activate one per turn. So that last restriction doesn't really matter, because if you target a Goki Link monster, it gains the only Goki Link monsters we're getting are Link 3s, I think. So it gains 3k attack, and it can deal piercing, so like that's basically an OTK on most void states. So this is pretty important for the deck. And since it's searchable, because the Goki normal monsters, the Goki main deck monsters also only search Goki cards, not just specifically monsters. So yeah, this is like an important like 1 or 2 off, just for OTKs for Gokis. And that's it for the drop rewards that were leaked. Lastly, let's go over the last 2 decks being Playmakers and Goes. So first up is Playmakers. Link Slayer we've already seen, I think. Yeah, it's in the structure deck that they announced. We have not seen the level 3 normal monster. I don't remember the rare monster name. I don't remember its name. But like when it's normal summon, you can special summon our Cybers from your hand, which is pretty strong. Really good way of getting your play started in Cybers decks. But let's see, overall, anything else? We have Power Code Talker. I don't think that was leaked in the drop board, right? So Power Code Talker is okay. It requires 3+ monsters. Well, not 3+, it just requires 3 monsters. So it is generic, but it makes you go -2 to summon it, which is really bad. But it's like fine for Code Talkers. But everything else in this deck has been leaked somewhere else. Because we're getting the backup secretaries from I'm guessing the structure deck, and guaranteed like prismatic one from just the world announcement. And Cybers Wizard is the same as the world announcement. And Link Slayer is in the structure deck. So yeah, really the only unknown card here is Power Code Talker. I'm guessing that's going to be like a level up reward. And lastly is Go's structure deck. So here it is. Gotta zoom in just so we can see it. So it has all the Gokis that we've seen before that are already in the game. But the more interesting parts are there's Goki face turn, or I think this one is, because that one special summons a Goki Link monster from your graveyard by triggering any Goki. So like that's decent recovery. And Goki Rematch is another big thing. Since it's a one-off, I'm guessing it's a level up reward. Like that's still insane because it's like it's a double monster reborn for Gokis, which is just insane, and since it's searchable, having only one is still fine. And Goki the Jet Leader, I think it's just a generic Link 2 for Gokis, like it just requires two Goki monsters, but that's still good, because like that gets your Goki effects off. And lastly is the skill that I will just be quickly going over. That one that they announced during they announced these during the Tokyo Game Show, and I did live stream that, but I can't read Japanese, so this is just in the translation I found. So Storm Axis, at the start of the duel, add one Deco Talker and one Firewall Dragon to your extra deck, and once per duel when you have 1,000 or less life points, you can add one random Code Talker from the Data Storm to your extra deck. So I think that the pool was like Trans Code Talker, Shooting Code Talker, X Code Talker, N Code Talker, D Code Talker, and also Firewall Dragon actually. No wait, Firewall Dragon just added from the skill anyway. But yeah, Firewall Dragon's probably the best Link turn 1 Link monster we're going to be getting. So this is probably going to be the best skill for any deck that just wants to Link summon. Especially since there's no real downside to running it. Next up is Burning Draw. Once per duel from the 5th turn onward, when you have 300 life points or less, you can pay life points until you have 1,000 and add one card from the top of your deck to your hand for each 1,000 life points paid, and you need 10 or more Salamangreat cards in your main deck to use this skill. Like, this is a good flavor, but like turn 5 and onwards, that is a rough condition. And you need 2,300 life points or less. And like if you're playing Soul Burner, your opponent can just play around it and leave you at 2,400 and then just attack over you. So you can never trigger the skill. So this is a pretty annoying skill to activate. And next is Fighting Spirit Avenger for Go and Izuka. And once per turn you can choose one Goki or Dino Wrestler monster in your graveyard that is destroyed by a battle. And set one Goki or Dino Wrestler monster with the same level from your hand to the graveyard, and place the chosen monster on your field in defense position. And you need 10 or more Goki or Dino Wrestlers in your main deck to use the skill. So you don't want to be mixing those two decks, but like I guess this is an okay Goki skill. You'd probably still want to run Storm Axis honestly over it, just because the access to Firewall Dragon for Storm Axis is probably better. Since this is just the straight -1 anyway. Because like if it was just special summon in the graveyard, it could have been busted, but like discarding a Goki or Dino Wrestler and having to summon one back with the same level is really restrictive. So overall, only Storm Axis really seems that good on the skills. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this quick video, completely unscripted. Overall, what's your thoughts on the Vrains World launch, like all the stuff for Vrains World launch? Comment down below what you think of the Vrains World launch, and like and subscribe if you want to see more Duel Links content. I'll be streaming the Vrains World launch when it happens, when I have free time later today, because this video is being recorded late at night because they announced the box super late, and after maintenance, the world should be announced. So yeah, I'll schedule the stream after that. But if you want to see that stream, please subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.